presentation is going to be an overview of project management in general, with my opinions and inserts in regards to Treasury. How does it affect Treasury from either a banking point of view or a practitioner point of view? I like my presentations to be rather dynamic, so if you have a question, if you want to agree with me or disagree with me, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question or do a statement. Happy to entertain that as we go. So the most successful project managers have perfected the skill of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? How many people here have led a project before? Right? Most people in the room have led a project, whether it be personal or professional. And the sense of ambiguity that's associated with it is something that you have to absolutely embrace as a project manager. You have to go in there with planning for the best, but again, expecting the worst, right? So prior to this presentation, in speaking with Sean and Bob, we had the idea of let's do a survey of the COAFP members and find out what their past project management experiences have been. So we put together a survey online and we sent out a website link. I'm not sure if you've received it. Chances are you've received it. And many people went online to participate in the survey, so I appreciate it. So here are the results of the survey. And I do have to apologize that the font on the top is a little bit small. I didn't have much control over that. But basically what this question is over the past year, have you been responsible for any Treasury management projects? Okay. So we see just shy of 19% at no, and just over 81% at yes. So the vast majority of our respondents in this survey said, yeah, where I am or have been responsible for a Treasury project. And that's what we find in Treasury, especially on the practitioner side, right? In the morning time, you're doing cash management. You have all your intraday deadlines that you need to accomplish. And then in the afternoon, generally, with project management. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And then on the banking side, also, I would imagine that there is implementation projects that need to be incorporated, product management projects that need to be implemented and distributed and so forth. So it doesn't surprise me that we have a vast majority of respondents indicating yes for the project management. This question says, what other departments were involved with your projects? Because if projects were isolated within Treasury, how great would that be? Right? Because, I mean, Treasury is 4, 5, 6, 7 people maybe at the most, and then you can incorporate, and then you can isolate it just to within Treasury. But we have Treasury's best friend in most of our responses, and that's the accounting department. So what we find here is that the accounting department, 12 of our respondents said that yes, our past projects incorporated accounting. Internal audit, which makes a lot of sense, especially with Treasury, especially at the intersection of Treasury and accounting. Having internal audit involved is just a great idea because they can bring other ideas of internal controls to the table. IT, budgeting, and then other, other departments. So this question is, has the scope of Treasury management projects increased since the start of the financial crisis? So what I've been noticing and what I've done a tremendous amount of research on since the financial crisis is that the strategic importance of Treasury management within corporations has grown exponentially. Essentially what's happened is that CFOs and CEOs in some instances are coming to the treasurer and the Treasury management group and saying, we need to have absolute visibility into our cash management. On top of that, we'd also like for you to take on insurance risk management, financial risk management, and so forth. So what I'm finding in the marketplace is that there's an increased scope of responsibility within the Treasury Department. And anyone agree or disagree with that? So I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding in agreement with that. So, and I think net, that's a positive thing for Treasury. TreaSolution does our annual Treasury survey, of which we just launched. And last year, one of the results of the survey, one of the questions was, how secure are you in your job? What we found out was that within Treasury, there was basically a high amount of job security during a time of financial crisis, which I think, considering the economy at the time, it's a pretty good thing. So I think the increased scope is good for job security for Treasury practitioners. So this was an open-ended question. And basically what it said is, what are the most challenging aspects of project management that you've experienced. So getting the whole team on the same page, communications is definitely a challenge, especially if you're dealing with a decentralized project where maybe you have some people in Chicago, some people in New York, some people in Columbus collaborating on a project. Oftentimes that can be a challenge. IT capability, consensus building and timelines. So making sure that you can reach the deadlines that are due. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on in this presentation, but I'm a firm believer that in order to have a successful project, we need to proactively plan for budget, time, and resources. Very key. If you miss any of those three, then chances are you're going to have a bad project, a challenging project. So timelines, that's a challenge. The large size and scope of a project. Sometimes projects are so daunting that they intimidate the people that are involved. So there are some solutions that we'll talk about a little bit later on, and that is breaking that large project into small projects that you can get your mind around. How do we make that first major milestone? That's project 1. How do we get to 2, 3, and then after 10, you got the whole project. Getting other departments to understand the importance of Treasury, of this project, right? It's important to us. We need to implement it within Treasury. How come accounting's not understanding that? Communications. You have to sell the project. How do you get buy-in to the project? Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the ever-changing rules and regulations that affect the scope of the project. The scope constantly changes. It's a dynamic project, right? That is a huge challenge. And in fact, I have a quote that addresses that. Unknown author. If project content is allowed to change freely, then the rate of change will exceed the rate of progress, right? Because if it's constantly allowed to change, you will never, ever gain that progress in that project. Here's some more feedback that we received. Obtaining information from the banks during a conversion, that was a challenge. Again, communications, you're seeing sort of a trend here. Communications, right? The scope of the project, limited time and personnel. Managing the various working groups to ensure that they are talking with one another, scheduled appropriately, and meet SLAs. I'm thinking service level agreements. I'm guessing that. And then the lack of people in Treasury to help with the project. This I see all the time. And I have it bold because they often say within presentations that people walk away with maybe 10 or 15% of what you said. This is one thing that you should really walk away with if you're a practitioner. How do you proactively plan for the resources that are required for a particular project, specifically within Treasury? I've been to many Treasury departments. I've never walked into one Treasury department where they're bored. Ever. They've never, ever been bored. What that means is that they are working at 90 to 95% capacity. Come a large project, then what happens? Right? What happens is that work becomes more stressful within Treasury. Resources lack resources. And the fact that you have this project that you're responsible for delivering with timelines and deadlines and budgets on top of it, interject a large amount of risk and ambiguity into that situation. So for practitioners of the world, when you take on large projects, it's imperative that you look for additional resources to help, whether it be with the project, whether it be with some other daily operational work. So this is another slide, and basically it says, do you utilize any software to manage your Treasury projects? 3 said no. The vast majority said spreadsheets. MS Project, Clarity, Outlook Tasks, which I thought was interesting. And then, excuse me, other software. So spreadsheets, this doesn't surprise me one bit at all because I'm a big fan of spreadsheets for the proper purposes. Spreadsheets are great because they're flexible, right? Everyone's familiar with them and they're easily distributed and you can get it like that. Bad side with spreadsheets is that they're flexible, they're easily distributed, and everyone can change it like that. So the positives and negatives for spreadsheets often are the same. Now that could be for project management or it could be for cash management if you think about it, whether you're doing your cash position worksheets and EFTs and so forth in the spreadsheet. So, but the great news is that it's available and that it is readily accessible to most people within an organization. And this question says, over the past year, would you say that your Treasury Project Management results were great, above average, average, below average, or poor? We have basically the majority right at about above average and average, which is great, right? I mean, people are getting their projects done and the project management working, but nonetheless, I do think that there are certain pain points, if you will, specifically within the treasury management industry. So that's those are the results of the survey. Any questions, comments that we can address at this point?
How similar are those results to other surveys?
So the question is, for anyone who may not have heard, is how similar are those results to other surveys that TreaSolution has conducted? This is the first survey that we've done specifically for Treasury Project Management. So this survey was built and created and developed specifically for your group. But in regards to the departments that are involved with other Treasury projects and so forth, that's very the accounting, the IT, budgeting, internal audit. We do a lot of research on Treasury workstations, and we find that those departments are often involved with projects. In regards to the software used for project management, spreadsheets definitely are king of the hill, and we find a close collaboration between spreadsheets and that are being used for project management and spreadsheets that are being used for cash management. So, great question.